Hopefully it's, oh, now it's on. I always feel like singing karaoke when I have a microphone in my hand. So, well, as a game show host, first of all, I have to say, as I told Steffi, I can imagine nothing more perilous than an American stepping off a plane to ask Europeans, what is it with you people? When are you going to get more competitive? So that's part of the discussion, but I think there's a lot of opportunities, and there's also a lot that I think the U.S. can learn from what's happening in the European market. But I'm going to call up our 4 panelists who are, so just come on up. We've got T.Hoettges, the new CEO of Deutsche Telekom. We have P.Vesterbacka, who is CEO of Rovio, who can be identified by his Angry Birds shirt. Come on up, Peter. You've won a seat on the panel. We have L.Schüler, who is the CEO of Unity Media Kabel. And of course, you have already met Dr. Paul-Bernhard Kallen, the CEO of our own Hubert Burda Media. So thank you, all of our terrific panelists. I'm going to start by, first of all, keying off the minister's comments and to give us some sense of what is the current state of competitiveness in Europe. And because you are the new guy on the block, Tim, I'm going to go to you first. I think you've got a microphone. You have one in your hand? Okay, so give us your sense, 2 minutes or so, of what you think competitiveness is like. How are you doing?
Yeah, first, welcome, everybody. Happy that I'm here. Look, the competitiveness is a big concern for us, and before I start talking about Europe, I would like to say that what the minister has said is fully 100%, something which Deutsche Telekom is supporting. We need the infrastructure, we need, let's say, the best networks, we need the fastest network, and we need the networks everywhere. And that is the attempt, that is the main strategic imperative of Deutsche Telekom in the countries where we are acting. So that is definitely the ecosystem for making all the applications possible, for making all these, let's say, good ideas usable. This is, the network is the core of it, because without a network, all the applications won't work. And without the applications, our network would not make any sense. So now where are we with the network? Look, in the US, the data traffic is growing by 900% in 5 years. In Asia, the data traffic is growing by 1,000%. In Europe, the data traffic is growing by 900%. So it seems to be that everything is fine. The growth is there. In the US, the revenues which are creating the money for investing into the infrastructures are growing by 35%. In Asia as well by 38%. In Europe, we are shrinking by 10% a year. Our industry is shrinking by 10%. If now every year 10% is less, revenue on the system, there's every year less to invest into infrastructure.
So you blame policymakers, or Europeans don't want to pay as much for content?
The consequence, you see that already. By the way, Germany is the better example in Europe. But if you go to countries like Spain, even France, you would not find the last technology evolution network of mobile. LTE is not deployed that year. If you go to high bandwidth infrastructures on the fixed line side, you will find countries where the rural areas are not covered. So why is that? Because our industry is shrinking. Now, it seems to be that there is even a digital divide now between Europe and the rest of the world. And I think this is something which has to be addressed. It has to be addressed from the industry, from us as network carriers, and it has to be addressed, by the way, even from the political environment in which we're working. In the US, you have 320 million people living, and you have 4 mobile carriers. In Asia, take China, you have 1.5 billion people living, you have 4 carriers. In Europe, in the 28 countries, we have 510 million population, and we have more than 200 carriers. There's not enough room to survive with this huge competition which we have. We have a regulation which is by far too much embedded into our entrepreneurial acting at Deutsche Telekom or even in the other carriers. And there is no level playing field with the international over-the-top companies coming from the valley, like the Googles of this world. If you compare, for instance, the net neutrality discussion which we have in the US and which we have in Europe, if you take, let's say, the customer rights which we are forced in Europe, compare that with the US, they are entirely different. And I think that is not any more level playing field. So I'm quite concerned that we as an industry are really capable, with the strength which we had, to build up, let's say, the infrastructure which is needed here in Europe. And at the ITNO conference, which is the biggest telecommunication conference in Brussels, the CEO of AT&T, he showed up and he said, in 6 years, from leading to laggard. How could that happen to you guys? We were the industry who standardized GSMA on the mobile side. And now LTE is more deployed in the US than it is in Europe. So I think we have a systematic error in the political, in the regulatory approach, that the ground of everything, the fundament of all this media world, the infrastructure, is not developing as it should be.
Which would make you think you'd want to invest more in, say, a T-Mobile. Just kidding, we'll go on to that. No, but I want to ask, Lutz.
I would love to.
So, do you share, you compete very much with Deutsche Telekom. We'll call you frenemies for this panel. What is your sense of do you have the same sort of dire assessment? Do you see more opportunity, different restrictions?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you that I can be here, and great conference. And you're right. I mean, we are heavily competing in Germany, and but from the infrastructure point of view, we are sitting in the same boat. And I can really support what Tim is saying, coming a little bit from a different angle. I mean, we are coming from the video business, and as you might know, the digital revolution hasn't really entered the video business yet. It's more the traditional business there, but it is to come. And there's a lot of companies now trying to get on the television screen, such as Google, Apple, Netflix. We all know them. And the question is now, what can we do in Europe together to stay on the right value chain? And here I think we need 4 topics. I think we need, Tim calls it deregulation. So for instance, when we have content on the video screen, we need to ask the local media authorities for doing so. And so if a new product called Horizon, how the EPG is working, I need to sign off of the states where we are operating in, the local states. That takes much too much time. Second, I think we are investing billions in our networks, as Tim is saying, and I think we must have a way to leverage that network, and that means also that there must be several business models possible, right? I mean, that traffic is increasing, we increase our capacity investments, but the way how we can monetize the network, we are very limited. So, number 3, I mean, I think that when you want, it's all about scale. And if you want to get scale in that business, you either have some content, yeah, and or you have an operating system. And in both ways, we are also limited by the cartel office and by the regulation. So, and I mean, it's all about scale. I think we all know that. And therefore, I also think we need deregulation, and we in Europe should have the possibility to team up forces and to use what we have to generate scale. Otherwise, also in the video business, we will end up being a dumb pipe. Yeah? And therefore, here I'm really on the same page.
What are the odds of you ending up a dumb pipe?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, look at the multiples of the companies, right? Look at the multiple of a pure network company, and look at the multiple of a media company. And that is all about value generation. That says everything.
So, Peter, I'm going to ask you to come in. As the consumer, as a producer, I mean, you talk about the European market even from the consumer experience point of view. You're all over Europe. You're also obviously doing a lot in markets like China, Russia, US. How does this compare?
So I've been in this like business and also kind of communications industry for, I don't know, 20 years or so. And I think that listening to you two here, I don't think that much has changed. So I think that it's always been a huge problem that you invest in the infrastructure and then, okay, other people are making all the money. But I think that said, I haven't seen too many operators in Europe or anywhere in the world go out of business. So even though we have had this kind of challenge for last 20 years or so, I'm not super concerned about that. But then what I totally agree with is that we need to have, I mean, there's no like European market. I mean, as we just heard, so I mean, you have Germany, you have France, you have all of these small markets in Europe. And I think that, again, if you look at the single market, yeah, we have a single market and people can move around and all of that without too much like restriction, but we don't have a single market for digital services. And I think that this is really pathetic when you kind of think about it, that if you take, just saw some of the Spotify guys here as well, if you want to launch a music service for Europe, there's no such thing. You can't do it. You have to go to every single country. I mean, if you're
But aren't
Apple,
they you have 26 regulators or so, right? Wouldn't you need? So how do you get around that?
I mean, even more. So there's like this illusion that we have some kind of European market, but I mean, we don't. And I think that that's, again, something that it would be like a pretty good start to create a single market if we kind of believe that that's a good idea. And I think probably would be a good idea to have a single market for digital services as well. And then we get into all these excuses, but okay, we have to protect the movie industry in France or whatever, and we can't because this, and then everybody in Europe is very good at coming up with, yes, we agree, but, we have this exception for our country and our market. And I think that's a bit of a problem. And I think that that's also with the operator space and all that. Yes, we have 200 operators, but I would also say that, coming from Finland, we've been reasonably successful if you look at the operator space, tiny little market, pretty big land area. So I think that you can make a business work even kind of like at smaller scale. So it's not always about scale, it's also about like the efficiency and how you kind of like run your business. So I think that sure we can make it more efficient and we can consolidate and we should let that kind of like happen. So I really think that getting rid of some of the regulation that we've been very, very good at creating in Europe would be kind of like a good step. And then I would also be very happy, from a Rovio perspective and with Angry Birds, that if we would have a single kind of like market in Europe, then it would be more interesting. Right now, for us, if you want to grow our business, we go to the US, we go to China. I go to China twice a month myself, and in many respects, it's easier to do business in China than Europe.
Okay, so easier to do business in China than in Europe. Paul, I want to ask your views in terms of, as a media company, you've also had experience with, say, the Huffington Post a couple of months now in Germany. What is the media market like, and how fair do you think the playing field is?
Yeah, you should see that media is part of consumer internet and the consumer industry. So I don't know much about bandwidths and how much we should have and how deep we should dig it. But I understand that for the consumer internet, it is very interesting and very necessary that we have a level playing field in Europe. It doesn't have to make a difference whether your server is based in Luxembourg or in Munich, whether it's in Ireland, in Paris, or in the UK. And what we see today is that the difference is huge. So once you are coming from outside to Europe, you have much more favorable terms to compete than you have once you are growing up in France.
You mean like an Amazon coming into Europe gets a much more favorable treatment than a homegrown?
I truly love Amazon, but if you have a server in Luxembourg, it means you don't pay any sales tax or a very small amount of sales tax if you sell an e-book to Germany. So if you do it out of Munich, out of Augsburg, you pay 19%. If you do it out of Luxembourg, the server is in Luxembourg, you pay none. If you try to build a music industry out of Germany, you pay 19% sales tax. Daniel Ek should be around. He can speak to it better than I can. If you do it out of Luxembourg, again, it's none. So if you have a cost advantage of 19% or 17% or 15%, whatever it is, in that critical point in time, it is really shaping industries. And so my biggest concern is that the regulatory environment is not even to all competitors. And I think on top or besides of the discussion, what is the right infrastructure and who should be paying for it, we should have a discussion, how can we make that level playing field, even for all competitors, no matter where their headquarters is.
Now, is the answer lie in Germany at the national level, or is the answer in Brussels? Is this an EU issue where so just give me a sense of that,
yeah,
and you can all...
The problematic thing is in the EU, almost everybody has to agree to anything. After Lisboa, most of the decisions are taken in Brussels, which is correct. But if you want to change something, almost everybody has to agree to it. And then the interest can be significantly different if you are about to restructure Ireland, let me say it very directly, or whether you are running a business in Germany. So Ireland makes a point of it, piggybacking on the situation of the core markets in Europe.
Maybe one more fact to the fact. I think today our internet coverage for most of the cities is pretty fine, especially in Germany if you compare ourselves with other countries. With LTE just here at the hotspot, we have 150 megabit per second here on the Deutsche Telekom network in this booth here. So therefore, you know, we have a great network. But if you compare ourselves, if you're standing in the jam, it's too late to build new infrastructure. So our industry has a certain, you know, latency to react on infrastructure. And we anticipate that this industry is exploding in the next year. You need new services which has to react in milliseconds. Everything is going into virtualization. So you do not need only download, you need even uploading. Even for the gaming piece, you know, you need a permanent interactive on the network side. Our download speeds, you know, okay, but the upload speeds are simply something where we have to improve. On top of that, we see all the new applications coming from new industries. Everything is getting connected in the future. Everything. We know that, and I do not want to teach the audience here, because this is the industry which is growing by 4 or 5% over the next year on the GDP level. Now, if you compare the necessary infrastructure investments with other areas, we are underinvesting. We are investing $130 per year per pop into infrastructure as European telcos. The US is investing $180 already for the last years, and Asia more than $200. This is, over the next 5 years, a gap of more than 700 billion euros, which we are underinvesting. And I could tell you, this industry, and now I'm back to Europe, is moving out of Europe. Take the IT hardware.
Is that your strategy too? What would your strategy? Here you're in a new CEO job. You're looking at this environment. Let's say nothing changes at the policy level. What do you do?
Look, the first thing, every dollar we have, every cash we have, we want to invest into infrastructure. We want to improve the infrastructure.
Here in Europe.
In Europe, in the markets where we're in. You know, because for us, network differentiation is something, you know, we get paid for it. By the way, we get loved from our customers if we have great infrastructure, and even we are relevant for the over-the-top players because we have the best infrastructure to offer. So for us, it's a key differentiator which we have. The problem is managers in Europe, they live with the interdependencies and the ambiguity in which they have. And our interdependency is that our cash flow every year is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And nobody in the industry is earning its capital cost today. So now, if you're not even an entrepreneur or a CFO, how could an industry which is not earning its capital cost, on the long run, invest even more? And now the question, are all these managers are stupid in Europe and the Americans and the Asians are much more clever? Or is there a systematic error? And I think we have a systematic error in the way how Europe is treating this IT industry.
I think Paul has an answer for you.
Tim, who should pay for it?
Look, by the way, nobody's asking for subsidies from the government. Nobody's asking that, let's say, the states should build these networks. I think what the problem is that we are regulated on whatever we do. We want to have 4 carrier in every market, even in the smallest markets. If you have a network, it's like flying with your jet over the ocean. If you have no passengers, you make losses. If your airline is full, you have yield management and you earn the money back.
So now
we have too much competition.
You've got a more fair situation. I mean, he's got an easier ride than you do, right? Because he's not as regulated as the telcos. So do you feel like you're more competitive against, say, a company like, say, Deutsche Telekom?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's several topics are coming here together. So first of all, I think in terms of network, I would disagree with you. I think that our networks in the cities are not good enough in Germany. And I mean, you know better than me that the cable networks are offers much more bandwidth and are much stronger. And you have to invest to get to that position. So I would not mix that up. And that is number one. Number two, for me, I think when you speak for Germany, there's no digital brand coming out of Germany. Yeah, think about a digital brand in the world. There's none out of Germany. No. Yeah. So that has to do, of course, not with all these limitations we are talking about, but it has also to do that I would say we have to learn a little bit to be. We are as managers sometimes risk averse. Yeah, and I think that because the world is getting global, that we have to take on more risks. And I think that is something we are starting now, but we are starting that late. And I mean, for instance, you spend a lot of time in Silicon Valley. When you are there, you experience a completely different mentality. And if we are honest, we don't have that mentality here. So that is also something where we should challenge ourselves and say we have to get better.
Also venture capital there that...
And then the last thing is, I mean, you raised the question, who should pay for it? I mean, at the end, of course, the customer will pay for it, and the customer is paying for it. Also, right? You said it in the States, and I think what we have to do simply is here we are on the same page. We have to get more opportunities to monetize our networks, and that is, and I'm regulated as well, and we are trying to keep us down. Both, yeah. So, and in the big world, yeah, I don't want to be too aggressive, but also Deutsche Telekom is a dwarf. Yeah, I mean we are even smaller, but in the big world, to the Googles of this world, Deutsche Telekom is a dwarf. So, and what do? I use the regulation, the telecoms in to keep him down. He's using that against me. I want to get in the video business bigger. He's afraid of that and keeps me down. And I think that is something, Tim, we should also talk about. Where can we cooperate better, that we are not only fighting against each other, but also stepping up the value chain a bit together.
We'll have you holding hands by the end of the... Peter wanted to... Yeah, there you go, holding hands.
So I would just say tough. And I actually personally love competition, so, you know, sounds good. But the thing is, and then also on the topic of brand, so, okay, we're based in Helsinki, in Finland, part of Europe. We built Angry Birds. We have more than 2 billion copies downloaded of Angry Birds. It's the fastest growing brand on the planet ever. 93% of the population in China knows the brand. 9 out of 10 Americans know the brand. And we did this out of Europe. So I really don't see any reason why anybody else could do that. I mean, if we can do it, you know, anybody else can. So I think that, you know, the thing here is that we have a problem in Europe, and also kind of like listening to some discussion here that, hey, I mean, yes, it's not perfect, but it's not like that bad. And I would go back to this, you know, like with the operators and all that. I haven't seen too many operators go out of business. And I've heard the same kind of like complaints about, you know, like being, having to invest too much. Now we go, you know, like we have to have GPRS is coming, Edge, 3G, LTE, and, you know, what will happen now we're investing too much. And I would say that, you know, of course, if you're investing too much, it's a problem. But on the other hand, one, you know, example, what enabled us to build Angry Birds? You know, build a brand, get to 2 billion downloads. What changed? We made 51 games before Angry Birds. So Rovio has been around for 10 years. We made lots of games and then Angry Birds. It's not that we made, of course we made a great game, but what really changed was the market. Apple happened. iPhone happened, App Store happened, Google happened. So instead of having to go to Deutsche Telekom, to Vodafone, to Elisa and Sonera in Finland, you know, to Telenor, to the 200 guys in Europe, I go to Apple, I put my game there, and I reach the world. So it used to be that we had to go to every operator, and then you guys employ people who told us that they know better than the consumer what kind of games they want to play.
So
I mean, so let's not forget about what it used to be. And I really think that we can learn a lot from this. And you know, if Apple can do it, if Google can do it, there's nothing stopping us from making a Google happen, Apple happen, or a new Angry Birds happen in Europe.
So
I really don't think there's any excuse.
Yeah, let me ask, with all of the discussion around the NSA and Snowden and you know, industrial espionage.
That's the best marketing campaign for Europe ever.
So I want to ask about the consequences for U.S. companies. You know, now that you do you think that there's a ripple effect where you're going to be more hesitant to do something with a Google or an Apple? I mean, because it's not just the U.S. government.
But I think that I don't think consumers will change their behavior. I mean, I'll keep using Gmail and I'll use Facebook and all of that. I don't think consumers in the end will do too much. But I think that if you're running a business outside of the US, I think everybody is really thinking about, can you keep any data in the US? I mean, really. Because
do the other panelists
the
agree?
reality has turned out to be much worse than anybody's worst fears. So I think that it will have a huge impact. And I really think that it's a massive opportunity for businesses in Europe because, again, it's not like a great marketing campaign for any IT company in the US.
What's the impact, do you think, on competitiveness, Paul, in terms of just the whole discussion around, even, for example, is privacy now taking more of a priority than increasing competition? You know, I don't know if it's changed the list.
First of all, I think not many politicians have been surprised. I don't think that many telecom companies have been surprised. I don't think that any search company has been surprised. So for them, it was most likely common knowledge. The key question is, will consumer behavior change? Very hard to predict. I think there are a few signs that they will do, but it's very hard to predict whether that is really lasting. If it comes to espionage, I think, especially in Europe and especially in Germany, where we have a very tech-intense industry, we have to think twice what kind of data we allow others to really get. And the very difficult thing, at least in my opinion, is it's so hard to understand who is friend and who is foe on that issue. Everybody has been blaming China for doing all that, and what is now apparent, what is now on the table, is that not the old friends are on that issue the real friends.
I want to ask, and I don't know if you want to weigh in on that too, but I want to switch to another issue, which is around what happened with the FCC and network neutrality and the decision that took place there where basically there's a sense now that, you know, the highest bidder will win. I want to get your sense, because I know that certainly Deutsche Telekom has had a stance on this. What's your view in general about the importance of network neutrality or not?
Look, the question when I hear the word net neutrality, I always question, what do you mean by net neutrality? If you ask people what net neutrality is, it sounds like a nice, you know, word, but everybody has a different understanding what really stands behind that.
So you define it for us.
To define it for me, what you mean. But anyway, I think what our position on that one is that, you know, for a telco, it's our interest that every content is available for every customer at every point in time. So this is a no-brainer because we live from this delivery and from the support. What we see as an issue in the future is that a lot of services in this new industry are demanding different kind of quality of services in the infrastructure. You know, there is, if you deliver an email or if you access, let's say, a search engine, you need a different quality service than steering a car or, let's say, even having a health service. So we have all, let's say, the demands from entrepreneurs, even in the gaming industry, to take one example, where they say, we need a certain kind of quality of service. And therefore, for me, net neutrality would even include that the telecommunication operators are able to offer different quality classes for their partners. and even for their customers. And this is possible, and this is, let's say, maybe the debate which we have, and the latest decision which was taken, by the way, interesting, again, Verizon in the US. Yeah. I think this is supporting this principle and this idea. This will help, even, you know, to steer the traffic. I think sometimes it gets misused, this terms of net neutrality. For instance, today, you know, we have huge, you know, downloads in our infrastructure and a little bit, let's say, uploads into American infrastructure, and we do not get a cent for that one. And there is always then the debate, haha, if you ask us for money, you are damaging the net neutrality.
So I want to turn to Peter.
So actually, you know, again, as I said, I've been around in this business for like 20 years. It used to be when we worked with you guys, directly with the operators. So you thought that a fair share for you of our business was half. So I would just like to ask that, okay, I'm happy to share money. You know, when we are making money, it's okay that you make money as well. But then I would like to also understand what that fair share would be today. Is it still half? Is it 30% like the Apple and Google tax? So, you know, it's again...
What's your ideal?
So, no, but I think that it's, again, it has to be a good business for you. It has to be a good business for us. And I think that we're more than happy to do fair revenue share deals, absolutely. But then I think that said, how can we do that? We need to deal with 200 operators across Europe. You can offer us, you know, great LTE network. Then I go to Spain. I don't know if they can. I can go to those guys and like, and so the thing is that then we can like start dealing with the complexity that, okay, I'll just go to Apple and Google and let them worry about it. And okay, at Rovio now we're like more than 800 people, so we could probably, you know, we could maybe deal with all of these interfaces, maybe, but we would have to add a lot of people. Then if you are, you know, like two guys in a garage or like bedroom somewhere in like Stockholm or Helsinki or Berlin, there's no way you'll be able to deal with this. So I think that, I don't know how exactly we should make that work, but I just would, like, looking at history, 50% revenue share deals are not fair.
He's going to give you 45.
I don't have the answer, but no. But I think that, so first of all, I mean, fair means that, as Tim has said earlier on, I think both industries have to keep growing and get a certain proportion of the cake, right? And I think, I fully agree as well with you what you said about the mobile operators. I was growing up in the mobile business. I started back in '94 in the mobile business. And in these days, the mobile operators have been very arrogant, and they have used a little bit, they have used too aggressive their network, and also these kind of shares were coming up in these days. And at the end, you see what has happened. For me, I'm not in the mobile business anymore. They are a dumb pipe. That story is over for me. Yeah. Therefore, I personally also left that industry, but that is just my personal view. And I think in terms of your challenge again, that you have to deal then with 200 operators. I mean, that is exactly supporting what we are saying. So let's help us that you don't need to work with 200 anymore. Let's really get across these limitations, and that you can work with us in a similar manner you're used to work with Apple and Google.
Yeah, but now it's kind of like been addressed if I look at from kind of like just games. But I mean, it's the same in a lot of these that, okay, instead of dealing with all of you guys, I can deal with Apple and Google. So that's like simplifies life, but okay, they take 30%.
They will come one day to us anyhow.
But yeah. Peter, I'm very surprised about our discussion, because, you know, it may be for the sake of a good discussion that we have different opinions or different, you know, things, but, you know, you always into trying to say there is a gap between the over-the-top players and the internet providers and the telcos and the carriers. By the way, I don't see that. You know, we are sitting in the same ecosystem. You know, whatever makes you good, you know, great business makes us a good business, because our customers are loving Angry Birds on their phones, you know, and we want to pre-install everything on our screen. And that, I think, you know, we should not polarize. We are sitting in the same boat, especially in Europe. But what I'm stressing is, if Google, and I do not want to attack Google because, you know, I'm living even with Google in a very well, but, you know, they are now working on the Android world, which is very relevant for you when it comes to software standards. I see a wallet garden on Apple. By the way, a lot of you guys will never enter into the wallet garden or will never come into their shops, into a prioritized list or get advocated for that one. How could you make business with this? Honestly, I think German telcos, even the Magenta giant Deutsche Telekom, we have a market cap of 50 billion, big, tough. But you know, all the internet companies in the valley, they are in the vicinity of 250 to 300 billion market cap of today. Guys, 5 companies in the valley, they dominate the world.
So what do you do?
These 5 companies are more valuable than the entire DAX. And this is the question. I think we have to build an ecosystem and rather fighting on this kind of discussion together.
I totally agree, and we have had very good collaboration with you know, Deutsche Telekom and all that. So totally agree. But the thing here is that yes, we need to work together, and we are. But I think also that we need to get over this. You know, I think that there is a bit of problem with kind of like ambition level and all that if I look across Europe. And one thing that I would add
That's my point.
I would add to this, and we're more than happy to do more and like to try to fix that. But then it's not only about the valley. I mean, we have like this little company. You know, if you look at Alibaba, that you might have heard of, they're bigger than Amazon, eBay, and PayPal combined. You have Tencent, you have a bunch of these guys. So there's some interesting companies elsewhere.
So let me ask about, I want to ask about the competitive landscape, because first of all, a lot of, you know, let's even talk about the European crisis. You've got a lot of people now eyeing Europe as an opportunity. You know, Carlos Slim, you know, many different, AT&T has expressed interest. They see great opportunity here. I want each of you to talk a little bit about what is your strategy? How do you win? Let's say you have no control over what happens on the policy front, influence, but in this environment, how do you win? Where do you put your money? Where do you put your bets? I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, as I said before, for us it is about scale and to generate scale in an infrastructure business, and that means.
But what are you doing specifically?
Specifically, we are really thinking about engaging more in the content space next to the infrastructure space.
Like Netflix buying a house of cards kind of thing?
Stuff like that.
So you have a TV show in the works?
We cannot, as a video company, we cannot, of course, allow that Netflix is getting completely access to the television screen. So of course, if our customers want to see Netflix, they must be able to. But we want to have also some more competitive product. And here again, that is a good example.
So you want more vertical integration.
Think about Germany, ProSieben and RTL. They wanted to team up 2 years ago to create the German Netflix, and that they were not allowed to. And that is, for instance, something, yeah. So therefore, I think that is, we need to create a German Netflix, one. And on the other hand side, we are also developing that ecosystem. It's called Horizon. And we want that people like you have an open source code where you can also offer your Angry Birds on the television screen in the future. And to do that, you need to have scale again, because just do it for half Germany is not enough.
Okay, so I want to ask, I want to go to Paul next to say, what is your strategy, if you had to say, in terms of where you would really be putting, you've talked a little bit about it, putting your money, your energy, your time, pan-Europe?
It's pretty much into innovation. We try to be home of the best technology people, of the best technicians. If we are able to attract the best and the brightest and to do with them small business today, which will become big business tomorrow, in the consumer world, we would love to do that. We don't spend a dime on infrastructure. But we try to do best consumer business with the brightest innovators.
And is there anything that you'd love to do that you can't do because of the policy environment? If you could wave a wand in Brussels or elsewhere just to say, here's what I'd love to do that I currently can't. Because
when I'm in Brussels, the only thing I'm asking politicians for is a level playing field. I would like to have to compete on the same ground, on the same level, with the same conditions. And having no disadvantage because I'm not an American firm or not a Chinese firm, but that I have the same chances as a German. It's not only taxation, it's about data protection, it's about income tax, there's a lot of things. If they would clean the battlefield for us, the rest has to be done by entrepreneurs and not by regulators.
Okay. Maybe a very specific answer on what could we do or what are we doing. The first thing is it's very complex for small companies to enable their service about all the telcos in Europe. Just 4, 5, 27 in Germany alone who are, for the service. So what we need is a kind of a socket, a plug-in. And this is what we are building, a platform which is a plug-in, a standardized plug-in for the over-the-top players. They are offering authentication, they are offering quality of service, they are offering billing capabilities, they are offering even security to a certain extent, so whatever this is. So some standardized items which the entrepreneurs, the small, could use easily. So in the back we need scale, because if you have this socket, and you immediately could open up for entrepreneurs, not 20, but 200 million screens. This makes a business, and this makes an alternative to the wallet gardens of the Apples or for the Google. So this is something what we are going to build in the next months, so that it is easy to connect to the carriers. We do not want to substitute this model. We need this kind of ecosystem out there, which is then coming into our network. And the second is scale. I could tell you it's going to be hard if you have 200 carriers in Germany, in Europe, and you have to bring all your service to every single of these carriers. It needs a long time. So I think
what parts of Europe would you love
matters.
To invest in more?
I'm sorry?
What parts of Europe would you love to invest in more if you had full carte blanche?
I think we should not always think in merger terms. It should be even in partnering terms, so that we have a standard API for the industry, so that cross regions, we work better together with others. I think, that is, let's say, the approach. No speculation about acquiring or taking over any companies. I think that is, anyhow, very difficult for us as telcos.
Yeah, so just on this, like Netflix and all of that. So again, when we launched our animated series, so we launched Angry Birds Toons, what we did, we actually put our Toons TV channel into all our games. At that time, we had like 1.7 billion downloads. And overnight, we created one of the biggest video distribution networks on the planet. First 7 months, billion views. So again, I don't think that there's any reason why you couldn't build like a German Netflix or like, a better Netflix for the world. I wouldn't like limit it to Germany, obviously. So like the thing here is that I really think that what will decide in the end is like who builds the best experience for the fans. So if you come and visit us at Rovio, what you'll hear in the corridors, every discussion, fan experience, fan experience, fan experience.
You changed your business model recently, right? In terms of even things like having the free download. And
yeah, of course we're always changing, but I think that the thing is that I'm all for having like APIs and making it easier for us and other people, but I don't think that you need to be able to compete on the experience level. And again, we've been able to generate a few downloads, a few views for our animations, and we didn't know that you're not supposed to do this if you're from Europe, so we kind of like did it anyway. But I think that it's a little bit like this, that there is no reason why you couldn't do this already today. And I think that maybe then, the Brussels side and also the like country governments and all of that, that I think that the most important thing is that they need to get out of the way and not make it more difficult for us, like all of us here, to do what we need to do, which is to deliver the best possible experience to our fans. And I think that that is something that somehow both like the EU and the national governments have kind of like lost track of, that they are trying to protect us from stuff that we don't really need protection from.
We have to finish up, so I'm going to give each of you last words in terms of what your message is. Competitiveness is a topic that people talk about for years. I know a lot of people are familiar with the obstacles here, so if you could sort of make a really feasible change that would truly either up your level of investment, or you think create scale, or if you want to talk about the consequences of doing nothing, just give some parting words, and I'm going to go to you first. Paul, in terms of what you think is, you said about a level playing field, what are some really actionable things that could happen as opposed to, you know, something we dream about that may never happen? Is there anything that gives you hope right now in Brussels?
I have a lot of hope because I think Brussels is about to understand that it's necessary. And I'm very hopeful that politicians will understand that consumer internet is a new breed, is a new sector of its own. It's not only telecom, it's not only software industry, it's not only whatever. It's not only media, it's not only commerce, it is that and much more. So they really have to understand that not the lobbyists of the car industry are going to come up with the right conclusions for the consumer media. My hope that is that we will see more innovation and more startup and more disruption. I don't think innovation means two duopolists copy something in the US and create a new monopoly. That kind of innovation I'm not so much interested in. I'm very much interested in that we have real innovation and foster it and come up with new solutions with first movers, with real innovation in Europe.
Lutz, do you want to weigh in? What's your advice?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you, Peter. It's all about customer experience at the end. And I think, yes, we are complaining about a couple of things, but first of all, it's a great industry we are in. So I wouldn't like to work somewhere else. So it's great. So we should not complain. We should really join up our forces. And we are doing every day everything to create good customer experience in terms of video, internet, and also telephony. And we want to drive scale, and at the end, scale will win, and therefore scale will happen. As simple as that. So
what's one change? Is there one change you think is happening that you're waiting for?
I think we will get the change. Which has to happen is deregulation. I fully agree with you, and it seems that the instinct move is to regulate more and more and more to help, and I think the opposite will help. And I think we are all, regardless where we sit, we want the same. So I'm a very optimistic person. So I have a lot of hope that we will be successful in convincing.
So, and Peter, you've talked about, obviously Europe is not Russia, China, US. You're always going to have these, or at least at the moment, these different markets. So what feasibly do you think should happen to make it a better experience even for the customers or for companies?
Yeah, I would take like a very pragmatic approach and look at kind of like the few success stories that we have in Europe, and then I mean, okay, you also should look at kind of like what is making people like Netflix and Google and Facebook and all of these guys successful. So really then understanding what regulation we need to get rid of, and I think that you mentioned many times the level playing field, and I think that that's really, I mean, we're happy to compete. We're happy to compete with anybody and love competition, but it has to be a level playing field. I think that that's something that is super important, and I think that that's what kind of like the national governments and the people in Brussels should do, and we really need to get away from this, like that we always then run into that, oh, but we can't do this because, you know, and then you will always have these objections. So I don't know how we can get away from kind of like that fundamental problem in Europe, that we're very good as Europeans to always like finding the problems and then, you know, like not getting past that. So maybe somehow getting back to this, that focusing on, again, the fan experience, you know, the experience for kind of like all of us as consumers, and really like looking at that. And I think that we many times forget and lose track of that with all the regulation.
And Tim?
Look, first, I'm very encouraged about what's happening in Europe. If you look to Berlin, what's happening there, if you go to other European countries, so we at least, you know, trying to catch up to the Valley and to other places on the world where all this developing are taking place. So this is quite encouraging. I'm very encouraged about the opportunities of this industry, unbelievable the opportunities we all have on our hands. The digitalization of the world, of our life is accelerating, so therefore great opportunities even for Germans with their classical industry becoming now digital, so great opportunities. You know, honestly, I'm a little bit more paranoid. I'm a little more maybe seeing the risks which are sitting on there, because the people on this world are not sleeping. The Valley is highly awake. They know exactly the business model, how they develop. They have already, let's say, a working ecosystem, which is working perfectly. And this is not the case for Europe. So my attempt would be to see, first, we have to be really aggressive on demanding best infrastructure, best bandwidth everywhere, because that is the underlying foundation. Second, we have to ask the reason if this is not happening. This is deregulation, this is not a fair level playing field, and we have to address it. And last but not least, we have to act accordingly, because we are debating things already for years and nothing is happening. So therefore, you see the growth of outside of Europe in some areas, and therefore I think we have a time to act.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our panelists.